Hi guys, it's Anissa. Welcome back to my channel. The last video kind of had me inspired to spread a little bit more knowledge, education, experience. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you every single beauty tool, makeup sponge, makeup brushes that I just cannot do my makeup without anymore. These are my essentials, and surprisingly, most of them are drugstore. I'm a firm believer that there are some things that high-end makeup does better than drugstore makeup, but I'm also a firm believer that there are a lot of things also that drugstore makeup does better than high-end makeup at a cheaper price. If you want to see what my must-have makeup brushes / tools are, then make sure to keep on watching. But before you get any further, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. I post on this channel every 4 days, so you never have to miss me for too long. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. Guys, we're gonna go ahead and start with sponges. Majority of them I have multiples of, and I was gonna show you like how many multiples I have of everything, but I was like, okay, that's a little excessive. So I'll try to make sure and note if I have more than one of them. And the reason that I have more than one of some of these tools / sponges / brushes is because I use them so much. You will find that you will get the best results of your makeup with nice clean brushes. Please make sure that you're washing your makeup sponges / brushes at least every 1 to 2 weeks. Makeup brushes harbor so much bacteria if you do not brush them. It is like the #1 easiest way to get acne that is avoidable. I want to mention these first two because they're very similar. e.l.f. Total Face Sponge. I always wet a makeup sponge because even if I don't put my foundation on with a sponge, I go over my foundation with the sponge because it kind of helps to get rid of any streaks if my foundation brush does tend to be a little bit streaky. I use this to blend out my bronzer. I use this to blend out my blush. I use this to set underneath my eyes, blend the concealer underneath my eyes. Real Technique sponge. Now, if you're looking for something that's not going to absorb as much product, go for this one because it's not as soft, but it's not super hard. So it has like the perfect firmness to it. For a really long time, I stopped using these. I don't know if they changed the material that they were made with, or if I was just using e.l.f. sponges for so long that I forgot about this. I do like the teardrop shape, but the teardrop shape is a little bit more messy because I usually use the round part of the teardrop shape for my foundation and then the top for underneath my eyes. So if you're holding it like too low, you get foundation all over your hands, versus on this, I use the flat side for my foundation, this side for my concealer and my powder, and then this kind of more round part for my cheeks. This sponge, honestly, I'm not even going to lie to you, is better than the Beauty Blender in so many different ways. This is just the e.l.f. Complexion sponge. Now this comes in a trio, one this size, a medium sized one, and then a really small one. I wish that they sold this on its own because I really don't like the super teeny tiny one. I mean, it's just too small to be able to do anything with, and it's so small that it's so messy that you get product all over your hands. But I honestly like this a little bit more than the Beauty Blender because it's bigger. You'll notice there's a trend here. I really like sponges that are bigger because they take less time to blend everything out with, especially when it's your foundation. It has a bigger surface area, therefore it takes less time to blend stuff out. And I found that this one is a little bit more softer than the Beauty Blender. I do own the Beauty Blender, but it's not like a favorite. I could definitely go without it. I'll use the medium sized one sometime for my underneath my eyes, but honestly, this is like just a one-stop shop. That's the only thing that I use the medium one for, so I rarely do get it wet, but I do own it. And then to go along with that teardrop shape, this is from the brand Haley's Beauty. The only difference between the e.l.f. Complexion Sponge Trio, the big one, and this one is that the point on this is a little bit sharper, so it's very easy to get underneath the eyes with. I wasn't the biggest fan of them at first because they were a little bit firmer. I like softer sponges. It's like, it just feels so much better to me versus like a hard, firm sponge that you're like pouncing on your face like you're beating yourself up. The more you wash these, the softer they get. I do own a couple of these, and I also own a couple of these. I have 2 of the Real Technique ones. This next one, this is the e.l.f. Camo Concealer Sponge. I don't use this as much as I used to, but I'm telling you, this is something I will just always fall back on for underneath my eyes. It has 2 teardrops on it, so it's skinnier and you're able to really get like a nice good grip on it without getting your fingers really messy and really being able to get underneath the eyes. Sets and blends beautifully underneath the eyes. e.l.f. blending sponge, and it was originally a like lighter pink when I got it. I really do love the teardrop, but the only difference between these like shapes to me is that's a little bit easier to hold this and have a better grip on it. I use the pointy side for underneath my eyes And then I use this part for all over the face. That's all the sponges. One thing I hate about doing these videos is I feel like I get really repetitive because there's only so many things that you can say about a certain like sponge or, you know, and then you just keep saying it over and over and over again. If I did not do YouTube and I didn't need a abundance of sponges, those are the ones that I would have and I would be okay. I tried to categorize the brushes in front of me by eyes, face, and then cheeks. So hopefully I'll be able to go in order. I don't use brushes on my lips. A classic wand, just a little spoolie. This is specifically the e.l.f. lash and brow wand. I like this one because you can bend it in different directions, so it has a little bit of an angle to it now, or I can bend it straight, I can bend it to the side. I do have eyelash extensions, so I like to use this one solely for my eyelashes. Spoolie that I use on my brows, which is like a dual-ended brush, I do not like to use on my lashes because it gets them dirty. Sorry guys, I'm not going off any notes like I probably should be, so I'm sorry if I'm a little bit scatterbrained, but I also wanted to mention a lot of these brushes I have had for years, like 4 to 5 to 6 years. So, you know, you don't need to spend $40 on a brush to get good quality. Matter of factly, I've had more high-end brushes poop out on me than I have affordable end. Just an essential. I feel like this is something everybody should have. And again, like, what's the point in paying $20 for a spoolie when you can literally buy one from e.l.f.? I'm just asking. Morphe M158, so you can tell one end is a spoolie, the other end is a actual brush. For the brush side, I like it to be really tiny and I like it to be dense. I don't like it to be something that is fluffy because it makes it hard to be precise with your products. The only brush that I have tried from e.l.f. that I do not like is their eyebrow brush, and it's because it's too fluffy and it's not dense enough. The Morphe one is an exact dupe for the Anastasia Beverly Hills number 12. If anything, the Anastasia is a little bit shorter, but like as far as density goes and shape, they are identical. This next brush I have 5 of. The reason I have 5 or 6 of these brushes is because I specifically designate these for when I'm carving out my brows. And if you guys watched my last video, you would know that I prefer using a thicker product such as a pot concealer or a foundation stick to carve out my brows. Therefore, this brush gets really clunked up very easily because the product is so thick. I kind of like this brush for the same reason that I like my eyebrow brush. It is dense and it is small, so it's very easy to be precise with your product. You want to be precise with especially your eyebrows because you're dealing with hair. I also have 4 or 5 of these brushes. This is the Morphe M173 brush. It's pretty much a small version of the Morphe M439 that I'm going to talk about later. I love, 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 love this brush for blending out any eyeshadow base that I have and also blending out the concealer around my eyebrows. It's the perfect size. If you were somebody that liked to nose contour, I feel like this would also be a really good size to blend out your product. We got some variety now. We have some Real Technique. This is the Real Technique's Expert Concealer Brush. This one is the Deluxe Crease Brush. Now this one is a little bit too big for me for the crease personally. That ain't even gonna cover your crease, that's gonna cover your whole eye. Also love these two to blend out eyeshadow base and concealer around my eyebrows. I was surprised that I liked this Expert Concealer Brush because it is a little bit more sparse. It's not super, super dense, but it really disperses and blends out product very, very beautifully. And I found too that the less dense of brushes, more likelihood there is that it's going to leave streaks on your face. I haven't found that with either one of these. This is the first high-end brush that we're gonna talk about, and I'm telling you, it is so worth it. I don't know the name of it because this came in a like 10-year anniversary set, but they do still sell it. This is a KVD brush. I'm just gonna go ahead and show you guys like the overall shape of it. The idea is pretty much identical to this Morphe M173 brush, except that it's tapered on the sides. So like you can get really, really close to your eyebrow and like really blend out that product. I was surprised that I liked this brush as much as I did because when I got this set, I got it because it was super cheap and I was like, okay, what am I gonna use this brush for? And it's absolutely perfect. Now we are moving on to eyeshadow. So I have 6 brushes right here that I'm just gonna like quickly go through because they all kind of do the same thing. They're just different sizes. So these are the brushes that I cannot live without as far as like blending brushes go, crease brushes go. Another little disclaimer, I have found with Morphe brushes, especially these blending brushes, they tend to be a little bit stiff when you first get them, but you just have to wash them a few times and then they really soften up. I'm sorry, I'm telling you guys these things because they're things that nobody ever told me and I wish I would have known. They're all Morphe brushes except for one. So I'm gonna talk about this e.l.f. one first. e.l.f. crease brush. Say I put a color in my crease. Here's a perfect example for today. So I put blue in my crease and then I blew it out with some purple. I would blend the purple out with this because it's a little bit more sparse, and I found that when you wanna like diffuse something and make it look really gradient, having something a little bit sparser is gonna really help diffuse it and make it look really pretty, no harsh lines or anything like that. I'm glad that I kind of did a colorful eyeshadow look today for demonstrational purposes. Sometimes for me and my brain, it's easier easier to show you guys than to try to talk it out. Also, for the same purpose, this is a little bit tinier than the e.l.f. crease brush. Morphe M506, and if you look at it, it's a really super small brush with kind of like a domed shape at the top of it. These brushes I like to actually use in my crease. Say I'm doing like a really natural makeup look and I just like want to throw some bronzer in my crease and that be my eyeshadow. Morphe M505 is like perfect for that because it is so big and fluffy. I love using this for like transition colors. Some of Morphe's brushes are like so similar, it's not even funny. And then I also wanted to mention this Morphe M504. It's just a little bit bigger than the Morphe M505. Morphe M456. I love using this for placing any color in the crease. Today I use this brush to pack in the blue into my crease. I also like Morphe M433. The only difference between these two visually, this one's a little bit more fluffy. I love to have dimension. I love to have a nice, really dark outer crease because it just elevates your eyeshadow look on a whole new level. The best brush I have found to pack color into my outer crease is this e.l.f. Eye Contour brush. It is super, super dense and also has that kind of like more dome shape to it. The perfect size for packing color into your outer crease. And I also will use this if I'm doing like a smoky eye and I need to pack a matte color onto my lid. I love that for this. This is a great packing brush. Not so much for blending. These are my 3 must-have lid eyeshadow brushes. Morphe M432 brush. Pretty much just like a flat shader eyeshadow brush. Very, very, very dense and stiff, which is good. You don't want all of your brushes to be stiff. Like crease brushes, you really don't want to be stiff. But something like this where you're going to be packing on glitter or shimmer is absolutely great because you're not going to lose any of your product. You're not going to lose any of your pigment. Something a little bit smaller than that I also like is this e.l.f. smudge brush. I do not use this for smudging because I think it's a little bit too big for underneath the eyes for me personally. I don't like to drag my waterline color super down and I don't really like to smoke it out a lot. I like to keep it up and tight. Bring it down too far, it kind of makes your eyes look like they're sagging. So this is also very great and it's a little bit shorter. Brushes that I've had for 4 or 5 years, this is one of them and you can tell because the font on it is completely different than my other e.l.f. brushes. This is the e.l.f. Eyeshadow Steep brush. Now they still do make this brush. It's just a bigger version of this Morphe E32 brush that I showed you, but it's also a little bit fluffier. I give you guys hacks on how to like get your eyeshadow really pigmented and how to, you know, get the most bang out of your color. Sometimes if you just want like a sweep of color, something like this is really nice. And even if you do want a pack to your punch, that's the thing that's nice about this brush. Very versatile and super affordable. For the waterline, this is the only brush besides one other one that I could live without for smudging out eyeshadow underneath my eyes and also placing eyeshadow underneath my eyes. Morphe M508, super tiny. I prefer something tinier for my waterline. Exactly identical to like all those bigger eyeshadow lid brushes. I like something that's wider because it takes less time to pack on your color. So this is like the perfect brush for underneath. Last for eyes, I have these 2 brushes and I think they're the same, but again, one of them is so old that I think they just completely changed the name of the packaging on it. These are both from e.l.f., but I love these for my inner corner highlight because they're just the perfect size, you get the perfect amount of pigment. I think the new one that they sell now is called the e.l.f. Small Smudge Brush. So I'll show you guys, like it's super teeny tiny. Longevity, hello. Next we are on to foundation brushes. I do have one high-end one because she deserves to be in here, okay? Let me tell you. This is the IT Cosmetics number 110 Airbrush Buffing Foundation Brush. It's just a flat top kabuki foundation brush. I tried multiple different shapes from them and I feel like this is the best one because you get the most coverage. I've always liked a more flat top kabuki type of brush. e.l.f. does make some that are like this, but the reason that I like this one better is because it's a little bit bigger, so takes less time and it's like the perfect density. It doesn't leave streaks on the face either. If you do have a foundation brush that does leave streaks, all you have to do is go over it with a sponge and it'll get rid of that, but you will lose a little bit of your coverage. Now to go back to the affordable side, I already mentioned this brush before. This is the Morphe M439. Like I'm sure you've all heard about this brush a million freaking times, but I think that they make it differently than they used to because this one is a little bit older. I do have a newer one that I can't find. I don't know where it would be, but I do have multiples of this brush also. The one that I have now is a little less dense and a little less big than this one. If I had to knock out all these and only have one, I would use this. Gives the best coverage because it's so freaking dense. Next, for a more affordable option, this is the e.l.f. Ultimate Blending Brush. Also really like this one. This one is very similar to the Morphe M439, but it's a little bit smaller and it's a little bit less dense. I won't complain because it is a little more affordable than the Morphe M439. This brush I only use when, say I want to have like a super light makeup day and I only want to do like concealer and powder. Real Techniques Expert Face Brush, and I think they changed the packaging on this one too. If they change the packaging on these, I will put a picture of the more updated packaging, that way you guys can see them. I love this for blending out concealer underneath the eyes, and then also if I spot conceal, it's really nice because it's dense and it's small, so it's like the perfect size to blend out underneath the eye area. Don't use this every day, just on more natural makeup days. I want to mention this brush quickly before I get too ahead of myself. e.l.f. Flawless Concealer Brush, and I put it at the end because I use it for my eyes and my face. This is also very good for blending out concealer around the eyebrow, but I use this brush every single time I do my makeup to blend out my concealer underneath my eyes. I'm like the biggest advocate for sponges, but I have found, like, especially if you're like me and you have a lot of little fine lines underneath your eyes, it's very hard for a sponge to get really in there and to blend everything out. So I will just take a brush and go back and forth, make sure my concealer isn't hanging on weird. And I do this with my favorite concealers too. Like, it doesn't matter, especially if you have fine lines, it makes your concealer want to hang onto those places even more. So going in with this before I set it is really important to me. I want it to look good before I set it. That way it looks even better after I set it with powder. Also have multiples of that brush. Now I am ready for bronzer and blush. I do use cream blush and powder blush, but I only use cream bronzer most of the time. I do own some powder bronzers, but I like using a cream because I think it's a little bit more natural. I'm not super comfortable with bronzer. Like, I'm not even wearing it today. The reason I use cream and powder blush is because I feel like it is a little bit more long lasting. I guess we can talk about bronzer first. This is another brush from that KVD 10-year anniversary set that I got, and I think I can still see the number on this. This is the number 10, and it's pretty much just a bigger version of the other little one that I showed you. Very perfect for getting in that cheekbone because it does have a little bit of a divot. It's very easy to get the product concentrated and blend it out, but also look very airbrushed. For blush, this first one is the Real Techniques number 241, and then this other one that I have is the Real Techniques number 405. Love these for cream blush. You guys can see they kind of have the same shape. This one's just a little bit fatter. This one's a little bit skinnier and less dense. It kind of just depends on what I'm feeling that day or which one isn't dirty. You're going to get a little bit more pigment with the number 405 because it is denser. I like how they're at this angle because it's just the perfect shape to fit onto your cheekbone. This next one I like to use specifically for powder because it is a little bit bigger. This is the Real Techniques number 202. Pretty much the exact same shape as the other two. It's bigger in size. It's a little bit denser. If you ever look at e.l.f. brushes, there's pretty much 3 different lines. Their first line is the oldest and it has the white handle like this. Then you have the like expert studio brushes that are black. And then the newest ones that they have this little clear handle to them. And this is the 103. I love this for powder foundation. It is so super dense. I do like a more flat top brush for powder foundation also, but this one, I don't know, it just hits different. Maybe it's because it's so dense. I think the clear handle ones are the most expensive. And if you don't want to spend as much money, e.l.f. powder brush, again, like a regular flat top kabuki brush. This one is not as dense. Then we have 2 brushes for underneath the eyes. So again, most of the time I do set my under eyes with a sponge. I love both of these when I'm doing more natural makeup and I want to set underneath the eyes. I'll usually use a pressed powder, and I really don't use a sponge with pressed powder. This first one is just the e.l.f. blush brush. It's a little tapered, like the perfect size for underneath the eyes for setting powder, and it also is a little bit tapered. Pretty much identical to it, but maybe a little bit better. It's also from this KVD 10-year anniversary kit. This is the number 25. Again, they do still sell it. It just looks different, so I'll go ahead and put a picture of it in here. I actually prefer this one a little bit more. The tip is a little bit more precise. This one's a little bit more sparse. This one's a little bit more dense. I use these 2 for the same thing. I just like to diffuse my highlighter on my cheeks with these brushes. This first one is the setting brush. This has never gravitated towards me as like setting underneath the eyes. Resembles the shape of the one that I do like. Maybe because it's bigger. Maybe that's why, because I've never used this underneath the eyes, but I love this for blending out my highlighter. You know, just because a brush says that it does X, Y, and Z does not mean that's what you have to use it for. Multifaceted brushes are the best. And then lastly, this one is actually from Five Below. It is the Chic Pro, and it says it's for highlighter. Got this from Five Below again, and I know that they still have these because this is like a newer purchase. Those are all the brushes and makeup tools that I just cannot live without. The tools and the brushes and the prep that you do before your makeup And while you're doing your makeup, those little things make such a difference. Like, you can have the most expensive makeup, but if you don't have good quality brushes, there's no point. Like, it's not gonna do any good to have all that nice high-end makeup. Let me know what your guys' favorite brand is for brushes down below. I really, honestly, if I had to pick one, it would probably be e.l.f. I could do a full face of makeup with just e.l.f. brushes. Although I do like Real Techniques and Morphe. Maybe I'll have to like do a full face using only e.l.f. brushes or something like that. Let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in seeing. I hope that this video was helpful. If it was, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. That way I know that you are enjoying the content that I'm making. Don't forget to subscribe. I post on the channel every 4 days, so you never have to miss me for too long. I'm going to put this video in my makeup tutorials playlist, which I will link right up here. I think it's right up here actually. But if you guys are into binge watching, I have so many different playlists for pretty much everybody. I have a haul playlist. I have a full face of first impressions playlist. I have a makeup tutorials playlist. If you're a makeup lover, there is a playlist on the channel for you, I promise. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.